Two people start Ozempic, same weekly injection, similar dose schedule. 3 months later, one person says, "I'm eating half as much." The other says, "I lost nothing." So what happened? Did the medication fail? Did the body ignore it? Or does 0% weight loss usually mean something important is being missed? Because in obesity medicine, no response is still information. And if you read it correctly, it often tells you where the real problem is. I'm Dr. Kim. Most people hear about Ozempic and imagine a very simple chain of events. Start the medication, feel less hungry, eat less, lose weight. Sometimes that is exactly what happens, but not always. And when it does not, people often jump to the wrong conclusion. They assume the medication failed, or they assume they failed. Usually the real explanation is more interesting than either of those. This is general medical education, not personal medical advice. If you are taking semaglutide and not seeing the result you expected, the safest move is to review it with your own clinician rather than decide, on your own, that the medication is useless or that your metabolism has declared personal war. So why can weight loss be zero? The first reason is that many people expect a starting dose to behave like a treatment dose. Usually, it does not. Ozempic often begins at 0.25 milligrams once weekly. That starting dose is mainly used to help the body adjust and reduce side effects. It is not generally the dose where the full weight loss effect shows up. That matters more than people think. If someone stays on a low dose for a long time because of nausea, supply problems, cost, fear of side effects, or simple caution, the appetite effect may remain too weak to change total calorie intake very much. And if calorie intake does not change much, body weight often does not change much either. This is one of the least dramatic explanations, which is exactly why it is often the correct one. Sometimes the answer is simply that the dose never got high enough to do the job. But let's say the dose was increased appropriately. Why might the scale still refuse to cooperate? The second reason is that appetite reduction is not equally strong in every person. Semaglutide works through pathways involved in hunger, fullness, food reward, and gastric emptying. In many patients, that produces a noticeable result. They get full earlier, think about food less often, and lose interest in eating past the point of comfort. But not everyone reports that pattern. Some people say, "I can't finish half my usual meal." Others say, "I still want the same foods, at the same times, in the same amounts." That difference is not imaginary. Research suggests there is substantial variation in individual response. Receptors, hormones, neural signaling, insulin resistance, sleep, and baseline eating patterns all interact. So if the hunger signal does not change enough, weight loss may also fail to appear. And this is where people often become unfair to themselves. They assume that if the medication worked for someone else, then no result must mean poor discipline. That conclusion is often too simple. Some bodies respond dramatically, some respond modestly, some negotiate like difficult lawyers. Now here is the third reason, and it is less obvious. Sometimes the medication does work, but the person unintentionally eats around it. This happens more often than people realize. A person may eat less at lunch and dinner, but start choosing more calorie-dense foods because smaller meals feel less satisfying. Or they may drink calories instead of eating them. Or they may snack more at night because daytime intake became irregular. It does not take much. A reduced appetite can lower intake by a few hundred calories. A few energy-dense choices can quietly replace that difference. The scale then looks unimpressed, which is rude but mathematically understandable. So here is the real question. Did hunger go down, but calories quietly stay the same? That distinction matters, because the medication changes internal signals, but it does not cancel the basic arithmetic of energy intake. This is not a moral failure, it is simply one reason the biology and the outcome may not match as neatly as people expect. The fourth reason is time. Some people judge the result too early. If someone is 4 weeks in, still on an introductory dose, still dealing with side effects, and still figuring out what they can comfortably eat, "I lost 0%, is not yet a final verdict. It is an early snapshot. Clinical weight loss curves are usually not perfectly smooth. There may be a delayed response, there may be a slow start, followed by more visible change after dose escalation. There may be fluid shifts, constipation, menstrual cycle effects, or other short-term factors that blur the picture on the scale. The human body has a real talent for providing partial information and then acting mysterious about it. That does not mean people should wait forever. It means timing matters. No response at week 3 is very different from no response after several months at an adequate dose. And that leads to the 5th reason: other medications and medical conditions. This is one of the most underappreciated explanations. If someone is taking drugs associated with weight gain or increased appetite, the net effect of Ozempic may be blunted. Examples can include certain antidepressants, antipsychotic medications, steroids, insulin, and some diabetes medications. Then there are medical conditions. Untreated hypothyroidism, sleep apnea, chronic sleep deprivation, high stress, and severe insulin resistance can all influence how the body responds to treatment. So if someone says, Ozempic did nothing, the next question should often be, what else is happening physiologically and pharmacologically? Because one drug is entering a body, not an empty laboratory tube. And here is something people rarely consider. Weight is not the only thing that may be changing. Body weight can stay flat while appetite, glucose control, waist circumference, meal frequency, or an upward weight trend quietly improves. If someone would likely have gained weight over 6 months without treatment and instead remained stable, that may still represent a real biological effect, even if the scale does not show a dramatic number. Patients do not love hearing that, understandably, but from a metabolic perspective, stabilization can still matter. It is not the result people came for, but it is not nothing. Finally, sometimes semaglutide is simply not the right fit for that individual. Not every useful drug works well for every person. That is true across obesity medicine, blood pressure treatment, depression treatment, and almost everything else. There are responders, partial responders, and minimal responders. If someone falls into the last category, that does not mean weight management is hopeless. It means the strategy may need to change, the dose may need adjustment, the timeline may need review, the eating pattern may need a more honest look, sleep may need attention, another medication may be more appropriate, and sometimes the original expectation needs to be recalibrated. So here is what matters. If someone loses 0% on Ozempic, the explanation is usually not that the medication is fake, and it is usually not that the person is broken. The better question is not, why didn't this miracle shot work? The better question is, which part of the system is limiting the response? That question is less emotional, more useful, and usually much closer to the truth. In medicine, 0 is still data. It is not the data people want, but it is data, and if it is interpreted correctly, it can still move treatment in a better direction. Subscribe for clear, evidence-based medical explanations. Medicine Simplified. This is not medical advice. Consult your doctor.